evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the June 8th edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin Dowe, and I'm happy to be taking you through this evening's conversation. We begin this week like we do every week. Thank you so very much for sharing part of your Monday evening with us. So whether you logged on to any of our social media platforms, looking on GBN Television, or tuned in to GBN Radio, welcome, welcome, welcome. And this evening, we're wrestling with a new topic, relatively new topic, certainly within the discussion within the national domain, that of Grenada's blue economy. I know you may have heard the term before. We get a chance to dive into it this evening. And with us as our guest, we have Mr. Nigel Gibbs, who is the Chief Fisheries Officer, and alongside him, Ambassador Jerry Eno, who is the advisor on the blue economy and marine affairs. Gentlemen, welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you, Brother Colin.
Good night.
Thank you for having us.
I must say I'm very familiar with both gentlemen. I have a fellow village mate, from the Jealous Mountain, along with Jerry, and we have, by virtue of our work establishment, long established relationships. So I'm happy to be chatting with you on this important topic.
Happy to be here.
Jerry, let me deliberately start with you. And if you can just share, what is the blue economy? We hear the term, what does it mean, really?
So the blue economy is environmental economic construct where we take all the components that are centered around the marine space. So you have activities like fisheries, coastal marine tourism, offshore hydrocarbons, renewable energy, things like whale watching, and all these are part of the blue economy. Mm-hmm. But these things, you know to yourself, these things have been existing and have been operating for the longest while. You know, there is fishing, there is yachting, but one of the things that we need to understand is with planning, the blue economy construct tends to want to bring everything together under one umbrella because we are all relying on the same resource, the ocean space, the coastal zone. So it is important that we have all these entities speaking with each other. So you have a Ministry of the Blue Economy that was established to ensure that everybody that interacts with that blue space knows what each other is doing. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that we found happening, and not just in Grenada, throughout the world, that's why governments and countries are trying to establish blue economy ministries, blue economy secretariats, because what they realize, a lot of the times you have duplication of efforts, because the fisheries does not know what the Ports Authority is doing, the Ports Authority does not know what the Coast Guard is doing, and they are working on the same thing. Mm-hmm. For instance, sargassum management is something that is currently the Ministry of the Blue Economy, and then we still have the Ministry of the Environment. Then you have Solid Waste Management Authority. So having a sense of control and idea. Now, the blue economy construct is not something that we are coming to take over what you're doing. Right? So we're not going to take over what the Ports Authority is doing as it relates to maritime affairs and so on. But what we want to know is what's happening so we can plan holistically for the development of the sector, because it is important that everybody knows what's going on, what each other is doing.
Okay. If you can, just for an ordinary Grenadian, we hear the fancy term blue economy, then there's Coast Guard, we know there's Coast Guard, there's yachting, there's customs. What does that mean to the ordinary Grenadian, that blue economy? So
for the ordinary Grenadians, I would say is to see the ocean space, the marine environment, as an economic opportunity, because it drives a lot of economic activities. All of our shipping comes through maritime space. We have very little, about maybe 10 or 5% of our goods that are imported comes through air. 90% of it comes through the ports. The fishing activities, it brings in millions of dollars every year. Coastal tourism, when a cruise ship comes into the berth in St. George's, where does the majority of our tourists go? On the beach. That's a marine environment. So for the ordinary Grenadians, I would want to say that you need to see the marine space as an economic opportunity. There is economic opportunities within the sector. Some of the activities within the marine space has grown up as informal sectors, like fisheries in particular. But it has to be seen as a business opportunity, seen as an economic driver for Grenada. During COVID, what we are doing, we couldn't export fish because there were no transportation. What you saw an uptick in local consumption of tuna and so on. During the short period when we had the export ban, we had tuna being sold, and we see the need for tuna. Mr. Gibbs will probably speak about that later, Mr. Dowe. Do you know that we import as much fish as we export?
Well, that one I didn't know.
Yes.
Okay.
So we need to see the opportunities in the blue economy. For the ordinary Grenadian, I would say there is investment opportunities in the blue economy. There are sectors within the blue economy that we have not tapped into as a nation. For instance, aquaculture.
I'd want to get there. But just before we go there, one of the things that almost seems synonymous with a conversation on the blue economy is conservation and its sustainability. Speak to that, to the ordinary Grenadian as well.
So the blue economy, the resources that we utilize in the blue economy space, they are living resources, right? So the coral reefs are alive, the fishes are alive, the seagrass beds are living, the mangroves are alive. So conservation is important for the existence of the blue economy. A healthy ocean means that the fish have a healthy home. You have global threats that we don't have any control over, like ocean acidification, sea temperature rising, and so on. We as a country don't have control over that, but we can contribute to the conservation that would help bring the global collective, and I will speak more about that later on, the global approach to managing the blue economy. Because the fish that swim in our waters swim to St. Vincent. So we can be doing one thing in Grenada, and St. Vincent is doing something else, or St. Lucia is doing something else, because the stocks that we utilize, the straddling stocks, what we call them, or the highly migratory species that we target, like the tuna, they don't belong to Grenada alone. They belong to everybody. Everybody can go on the high seas and fish, and everybody has the exclusive right to fish within their jurisdiction. So it is important that conservation, Mr. Dowe, play a very important, and even for the ordinary Grenadians, littering. Littering is a problem for the coastal ecosystem. Now, what most people don't realize, what we don't realize is that coral reefs rely on sunlight. They use photosynthesis. The seagrass. So can you imagine a simple logic? You throw a plastic bag or a box into the drain, it ends up in the sea. That box goes over a piece of coral. The coral can get sunlight, what happens to it? It dies. Mm-hmm. Simple things like these. Then you have the runoff from your home, from your sink. These things end up in the coastal environment, and they affect corals and so on. Are very sensitive. 1 degree rise in temperature and they die. Mm-hmm. So we as if you are not directly connected to the blue economy, your simple habits can have an impact, and it is important that you have. The farmers who are farming upland in our watersheds, they contribute and they affect to the blue economy, the type of fertilizer they use. So macroalgae that grows within the marine system, people call it lally and algae, it's macroalgae. Again, it's a plant. What does a plant need on the farm? Fertilizer and sunlight. So the macroalgae is something that is basically harmful to coral reefs because they grow faster than coral reefs and they cover them and they kill them. Mm-hmm. So what happens? You using excess fertilizer on your farm, or you don't have a buffer between your plot of land and the river. So when the rain falls, your fertilizer washes into the river, ends up fertilizing the algae on the coral reefs. Mm-hmm. Killing the yeah.
Right.
So conservation at the very fundamental level, conservation, your habits, your basic habits at home. The littering is a serious problem. Mm-hmm. Whenever there is a heavy rain downpour, you would see on the reefs, you would see Coca-Cola bottle, you would see KFC box, you would see all these things. When you have coastal cleanup, you dive and you get tons of garbage. So conservation is important for us as it relates to the blue economy, because that's how the individual who is not connected to it directly, whether you're a fisherman, a vendor, a day charter, a sport fisherman, but you at your home, you Mr. Dowe, at your home you practice proper disposal of your waste, you don't litter. I mean, ever since litter, anti-litter programs have been running. And it needs to be persistent because people need to see the connection with what they are doing. The rainwater from the rainforest. This takes a matter of minutes to get from Graniton to the coastline. A matter of minutes. Because we are not a large country, so it takes a few minutes to get from Graniton to the coast. And it carries everything that it picks up along the way. The waste from the garages on the side of the road, the chemicals from the hairdressing salons. This all ends up in the marine environment.
And therefore, in order for us to protect our marine environment, and the majority of Grenada is water, right? We were 375 or so square kilometers in terms of land,
yes,
and close to 27 in terms of water. So the majority of it is water.
Yes,
is water. Nigel, is today World's Ocean Day?
World's Ocean Day, as declared by the UN.
Okay, so June 8th, World's Ocean Day. What is the purpose of a World's Ocean Day?
Well, the purpose of our World Ocean Day is really to bring awareness to the ocean and the support that it gives really to humanity on a global scale. Okay. So this year's theme is Beyond the World We Know, because our land space is what we know. Our ocean space is still quite less known on our ocean floor than what is known on the moon, because we've had missions to the moon. And so there is, this year's theme is Beyond the World We Know, reconnecting with our ocean and to relearning what the ocean contributes to our survival on this planet. 70% of the world's surface is covered by water, which means the larger part of our world, the contribution that is made comes from the water, from the sea and the marine space. One of the focus on the theme for World Food Day this year is, for World Oceans Day, is looking at the marine protected areas. And in fact, the 30 by 30 initiative for marine protected areas in terms of how much of our environment we will put under protection globally. So you would hear of all these 30 by 30, was 20 by 20, then it reached 25 by 25. Now, because the challenge keeps increasing, the pressure that...
let me ask you, have we succeeded? In other words, did we get 20 by 20 or even 25 by 25 for us to be optimistic that we can get 30 by 30?
So we have to keep shifting the goalposts because of the challenges that are coming up with our global management of our marine space and our environment. We're looking at a lot of industrialization, coastal development, a lot of deforestation, and as Brother Eno would have commented, what happens on the land directly impacts our marine space. Right. So all of the development we have on the land, the construction, we've seen a lot of construction happening in Grenada now, where we're now cutting into the mountainsides, into the rocks, to lay houses on flat foundations. What happens to all that silt and all that sediment that is generated? It washes into our nearshore habitat, smothers the coral, the seagrass beds, and these are the ecosystems that we don't really, as the ordinary human, as the ordinary citizen, we don't look at the ecosystem services and put a value on what these ecosystems are providing for us. Oxygen, cleaning and resuscitating the marine space, and acting, especially in our nearshore environment and habitat, acting as a recruitment area for all our commercially viable fish species. So we know the value of the conch, how expensive it is, the lobster. We need these marine species. Even the pelagics that we target, a lot of the life cycle happens right within swimming distance from our coastline. And if we do not manage what is happening on land, eventually we'll keep losing the marine space that is, or the marine environment that is contributing to our daily living. And that is why we have to keep shifting the goalposts. So it may soon become 35 by 35, because we now have to shift the goalposts. We have sea surface temperature rise. Now the big challenge for us is the sargassum. And it's because of the enrichment of our ocean, our water column, especially our sea surface. The enrichment from the activities on land, the nutrient enrichment, has caused these blooms and these habitats that are existing, and they have their purpose in the ocean. The sargassum act as a marine ecosystem for the recruitment and the survival, creating a habitat for a lot of the pelagic species. When they come into nearshore, it makes, or what we say stranded, or we have the influxes, it now creates a new challenge for us. So there's degradation to our coastal zone. There's effect on human health because of the gases that are emitted from the decomposition, and it adds a whole nother problem, creates a whole nother dynamic.
One of the things that you have not yet mentioned is, and I think it was alluded to in terms of temperature rise. I think a couple of years ago we were warm, right? But I don't think we appreciated the impact of that seeming increase in temperature on land. For those of us who dive, we have seen the impact on our reefs.
Yes, the coral bleaching.
On the coral bleaching.
Exactly.
How quickly is there rejuvenation of our coral reefs? I mean, because it happened, within a matter of months. We saw it dissipated.
Yes, gone. And for us, and I allow Brother Jerry to also contribute, bleaching events can be very catastrophic to our fishing industry and our marine space, especially our nearshore ecosystem. We have what you would call connectivities of habitat. So the first area, ecosystem, or habitat that's created is created by our fringing mangroves. Then that goes into the seagrass beds, and then in and between the seagrass beds and just beyond, you have mainly our coral reefs. Right. So you have branching corals, you have boulder corals, you have encrusting corals. Corals really help, one, provide oxygen. They convert the carbon back into oxygen and provide a healthy feeding and living habitat for our fish species. Now, when the coral reef bleaching happens, what can happen if you lose that coral reef system? Because it's just the expulsion of these zooxanthellae, these microscopic organisms that lives and build what you see as these marvelous shape features. So you have some like the elcon and the stalcon, or acropora, or finger corals, or encrusting corals, the brain corals as we know them. They create habitat for juvenile species. And once you have a breakdown in that ecosystem, what you would have happening is a mass migration. So the fish wouldn't die as a result, but they would move. Right. They will go into deeper water. Now, Mother Nature has a way of restoring herself. So once the parameters, the temperature goes back to normal, the surviving or the resilient organisms will move back into the space, and they will start building that skeleton, that coral structure again. What is challenging is the continuous pressure on those ecosystems. So extreme temperature rise, and not just extreme, so you have a drastic change, a significant increase, so you're talking upwards of maybe 34, 35 degrees Celsius, but that is for prolonged periods. So where we used to have these intermittent or regular, normal dry periods, you will now have a 6, 7, 8 month extreme temperature rise, and that persistence of that pressure could now not damage the coral reef system, but destroy it. The animals, the microorganisms would not just move away, but they would die. And now the repopulation is what's going to be challenging. The sedimentation also leads to bleaching. And because now we have all of this now, if you look in the dry season, our near shore, the beaches, the coastline, the water is normally pristine and clear. We want to use the word pristine too much because we have changed from when it was pristine, from the creation of the world. I think that was the day when we lost, we could have claimed pristine environment or ecosystem. What that sedimentation it reduces the sunlight. So photosynthesis diminishes.
And sometimes we don't realize, because we know on land Plants through photosynthesis will produce the oxygen that we breathe.
Yes.
But the reefs
do the same
thing underwater for the fish.
Right.
And if they're destroyed,
not just for the fish, for the humans
as well.
Because the ocean would expel, release that oxygen into the atmosphere, and we, of course, would breathe it in.
Jerry, one of the things that we have not touched on is that of sustainability and us acting as humans in a sustainable manner. So we have open season and closed season for things. Speak to the Grenadian as to the importance of us adhering to these.
So closed seasons are critically important because what we do is protect the reproductive period of, so most times when you have a closed season for whether it's a terrestrial animal or a marine animal, it is to protect its breeding cycle. So when it reproduces. So harvesting any species within their breeding period is something we have to be appreciative of. When a fish or a lobster is laden with eggs, it is literally thousands of lobsters, thousands. So imagine one lobster has, say, 10,000 eggs, and you have 100 lobsters with 10,000 eggs each, and that's millions. So imagine you harvesting it during the closed season. The very same fishermen that are dependent on that lobster, they are fishermen. They are not going to transition to another job. They are fishermen. That's what they love. That's what they want to do. And for the general public, I think you as a citizen have to play a part in knowing and educating yourself. When the chief fisheries officer and his team gives out an advertisement and say closed season, you for yourself, Mr. Dowe, should not buy a lobster during closed season, no matter what justification the fisherman gives you, because you know, hey, I cannot be contributing to you destroying your livelihood.
Right.
Because
and my continued enjoyment. Yeah.
because you would want lobster.
In the future.
So let me tell you, I'll give an example in a regional country here, one of our CARICOM member countries. I'm not going to call name. So the tourists were asking for lobsters of a particular size, right? Because they wanted the lobster to fit on the plate. So the fishermen were harvesting lobster as a particular size. These lobsters were not reaching their maturity. So they were not adults, so they could not reproduce. So over the years, the lobster stock in that country started dropping because what?
Nobody to produce new lobsters.
Nobody to reproduce. Right. So and you brought it up earlier on what the ordinary person can do. You can play a part. You listen to the advertisement and say, when there's a closed season for lobster, when there's a closed season for sea urchins and so on, adhere to it. And do not support it because you are destroying that ecosystem.
Speaking of destruction, we saw a press release coming out from the Ministry of Marine Affairs today, speaking of the slaughtering of a leatherback turtle about a month ago. What is the message, again, for Grenadians?
Well, the message for Grenadians is that it is illegal to and for a specific species, the leatherback turtle, there is a moratorium that is in place, which means that that species should at no time within the year be harvested for any purpose, specifically for food. And I just want to make a clarion call to the public here, because for the people who understand the biology of these turtles, the leatherback in particular is not a very good tasting, or I would say aromatic meat, good flavor. It's very oily. And so the ordinary person wouldn't just normally buy the meat from that. So it has to be somebody who has really been targeting it over the years and have grown accustomed to the taste, or probably have some other alternative uses. But we are still investigating the matter. We've contacted Coast Guard, we've worked with SGU, through Ocean Spirit, one of the NGOs here that normally helps manage with the and scientific studies on these species. But the leatherback turtles is listed on the IUCN list internationally as endangered. critically endangered.
So there's no open season and closed season?
There's no open season and closed season for the leatherback. It is closed. There's a moratorium.
Why did the press release take this long? If my memory serves me correctly, it was 9th of May or thereabouts. So it's about a month before this press release came. Why so long?
And we did move immediately. In fact, I was out of state when I got the news. Well, transitioning to leave the country, in between leaving Grenada. And sometimes I think little processes that we may think are arbitrary and may happen, sometimes you have to stay on it to ensure that the message gets out as soon as possible. Now, the turtle was killed some days, probably about 5-6 days before we found out, because when officers were dispatched to the scene based on the report we got, what we found was the carapace and the intestines and an extended state of decay already. Okay. But what should have followed was immediate action, and I think because of all the challenges we had, we were just a bit delayed in getting that news to the media. Notwithstanding that the public has been made aware that it is closed season, particularly a closed season annually for the leatherback species, but from March and then from April, end of April, so 1st of May to the 31st of August, all other species are targeting, and which includes our Caribbean spiny lobster. This is the breeding season that is closed. The conch is another interesting one. We do not have a closed season for it, but we're moving in that direction, simply because of the unsustainable harvesting of it. What we found recently is that, well, growing up, and one of the things I want to stress on here is our culture change. We have to change our culture. So the juvenile conch is what we love to eat. We call it pick it, we make waters, and it's now becoming an industry. Mm-hmm. So people who offer in lambi waters and these little dishes from young juvenile lobster, we are now looking to really crack down. In fact, we have teamed up with the Ministry of Agriculture, the Alasani team, to assist us in doing monitoring, and we found where there are significant recruitment of juvenile lobster in the Fort Judy, Westerhall, Pitibaka area. We carried out some rapid assessment there, and those are the areas that are being heavily targeted, where the persons are removing these juvenile conch, and so to protect it, we will definitely have to move to implement a closed season and to monitor more regularly so that we can
and we're probably retarding here, regressing some, because we were at the stage where there was some closed season. Same with the sea urchins. The sea urchins. There was a total ban for a number of years.
For a number of years. We had a moratorium on the sea urchin.
Right.
We removed the moratorium, and in 1 year, the stock was depleted again because of the overharvesting. So we now have to move. We've had a die-off, regional die-off, similarly with the coral bleaching. So 2022, 2023, there was a regional die-off of the sea urchin. We're monitoring the population, but we have to do a more scientific, a more in-depth scientific research to see what is really happening with our sea urchin. And it could stem from not only overharvesting, but ecosystem loss, habitat loss, habitat degradation, as well as some of the other climate and global challenges that we have in. But notwithstanding, we are moving assiduously to deploy officers, fisheries officers, that will be responsible for monitoring, control, and surveillance. We're bringing in new persons into the MPAs, and we'll speak about the MPAs some more, because it's one of the focus for World Oceans Day this year. Okay. And so we have to make some impetus there.
Jerry, how do we get people to be disciplined? So we talk about the leatherback turtle, and I thought we all know that we don't kill leatherback turtles, and here we have just a month ago the killing of one. A couple of months ago we saw one of the sharks that were protected being killed as well.
I think it could be two things in working together against us. So colloquially, we know that there is saying that anything that good for the back for the back, right. And leatherback turtle eggs is one of the aphrodisiacs that people, because, and not only in Grenada, in Belize and so on, they have big campaigns that Viagra is better than turtle eggs. So it is one of the things that the meat that is seen as something that men should use. So on top of this, a bit of ignorance. We still fear sharks still. So just like somebody see a shark or a snake, the first thing that comes to mind is, let me kill it. But they serve an ecosystem function. Now, if you kill out a particular species within an ecosystem, what happens is that it creates an imbalance, right? And once there's an imbalance, if you kill out one of the main predators in an ecosystem, in a functioning ecosystem, what happens is that function that prey used to serve is no longer there. So what you have now, the other one below rises up, and there's no control over it. So it just takes over the role of that one, and it throws off the entire ecosystem. Right. So that is the two things that is working against us.
Okay. All right, it's time for a first break, but certainly when we come back, we'd have to address fishing in general and the successes and challenges that brought about the challenges that we had before this success. So viewers and listeners, we'll be right back.
At 5 p.m. on August 5th, 1944, the schooner Island Queen sailed out of the St. George's Harbor. On board were some of Grenada's brightest and best sons and daughters. What happened afterwards remains a mystery.
Where Island Queen gone?
Heritage Theatre Company presents Lucy's Straw Hat, a full-length drama written and directed by Chris DeRiggs, a moving story about a family caught up in the drama of this great mystery. Meet Hyacinth, haunted and always ready to do mischief.
Rich man, he'll make him sign for you?
Lucy, beautiful and headstrong.
I had a dream, Mommy, but Hyacinth was there, holding my hand.
Lucy's Straw Hat at Grenada Trade Center on Saturday 13th and Sunday 14th June, and at the Luke Cinema on Saturday 20th and Sunday 21st June. Advance tickets $60, $75 at the door. Come join us.
Where Island Queen gone?
Looking for the perfect pre-carnival fete? Then get ready for Rhythm and Spice, a Rotary brunch experience happening Sunday, June 28th from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. at Quarantine Point Recreational Park. Enjoy an afternoon of bold flavors, vibrant rhythms, and unforgettable vibes featuring Sakina and the Alpha One Band, plus guest artists and DJs. Early bird tickets are just $200 and available now on GoToFet.com. Dress code brunch chic, island elegance with spice-inspired tones. Hosted by the Rotary Club of Grenada. Proceeds support Rotary community projects. Rhythm and Spice, Sunday, June 28th, Quarantine Point Recreational Park. Sip, savor, socialize, support.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Thinking about your new home? Think easy. Think a Republic Bank Home Easy Loan. Think affordable. Think convenience. Think Republic.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3. Republic makes home easy.
Wow, that was such a breeze.
Own your home with ease.
So whether laying that first brick or purchasing an existing home, we've got you covered. Republic Bank will get you those keys hassle-free in no time.
Home is easy as 1, 2, 3.
Apply for a Home Easy Loan today for a chance to win a cash prize. Getting your new home is easy with Republic Bank.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the island's boldest ATV experience. The only tour daring enough to bring you this level of excitement, freedom, and adrenaline. Feel the power. Conquer rugged trails. Experience breathtaking views. Ride beyond the ordinary. Feel the power. This is not just a tour. This is the power of Ride ATV. Get ready for fun. Get ready for excitement. Get ready to ride. Book now at ride.gd. or call 473-422-1011. Ride ATV. Adventure starts here.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. We're discussing Grenada's blue economy. We have with us the Chief Fisheries Officer, Mr. Nigel Gibbs, and Ambassador for an advisor for Marine Affairs and the blue economy, Ambassador Jerry Eno. Jerry, we saw the restoration of seafood exportation to the U.S. early on this year. Can you just briefly recap how we got here? Because the ban impacted us, was a lot of social discussion. How did we get there?
So one of the things that we have to understand, Mr. Dowe, when there is a shared resources among multiple countries, so we fish tuna, so we're going to talk about the tuna longlining industry.
Right.
It is Atlantic tuna. It's called the Atlantic tuna, right? So all of the countries that border the Atlantic Ocean can fish. As a matter of fact, anybody can fish the Atlantic tunas. But part of the management of that shared resource, each country that harvests that resource has a quota. They have to report data to the FAO, to ICAT, which is the International Convention for the Conservation of Atlantic Tuna and tuna-like species. So they manage it. They do the scientific assessments and they tell you how much you can harvest based on your population size, based on your economics, whatever metrics they use. But we have to be attending ICAT meetings and we have to be a part of the discussion. One of the things that happened over the last 10 years or so, Grenada has not been attending ICAT meetings, right? So, and on top of that, we were not reporting properly. Mr. Gibbs went to ICAT meeting last year or year before and he got a standing ovation. First time Grenada has somebody coming to ICAT in years. In 10 years or so, Grenada has somebody attending ICAT meetings. And these meetings are very, very important because you get to have a say in the discussion and the framing of the regulations, the quotas for the year. These things are important. Now, what led to us not being able to export? It's something that stemmed from more than 15 years ago, right? We were supposed to report. We are supposed to change our laws or our regulations. Regulations and fisheries management tools are not static tools because the fisheries is based on science, is based on moving a living organism, which is the whole entire marine ecosystem. So it requires flexible management and reporting, scientific study, data collection, and so on. So what has been happening is we have not been following the rules, the international regulations. We got warnings upon warnings. Nothing was done. So over the years, it happened. So they were not punishing us. So everybody think, okay, well, is it status quo? Let's just operate that way. So what happened? The US found a loophole to say, hey guys, you can't export to us. And the reason why we can't export to the US is because our law are not comparable to the US law. No fault of Grenada. The loophole that they found is the hunting of whales. Now, Grenada is not a traditionally whaling country, right? We have the last time we had any sort of a whaling practice was in the 1920s and before that. And it was not Grenadians. It was a Norwegian company that Glover's Island, behind of St. George's University, is an actual whaling station.
Correct.
Right? So one of the things that they found that was not existing in our law, that was in the U.S. law, is that the protection of marine mammals. We never sought to put marine mammals under protection in our laws because we don't hunt whales. So we're not going to. It's like us putting polar bear management in our terrestrial laws. We don't have polar bears. We don't hunt polar bears. So it's the same thing that they found. So what we had to do was revise the Fisheries Act and the regulations and come up with a law just saying we prohibit the hunting of whales.
But I don't understand this, because you said this was ongoing for quite some time.
Yes.
It took, well, the punishment was delayed. Let's put it that way.
Yes, the punishment was delayed.
And then we got in a panic because there was an actual ban.
Yes.
I mean, why did we get here? Do I blame politicians? Do I blame Mr. Gibbs and the public officers? Do I say the exporters weren't minding their business? Is it the fishermen? Why was Grenada placed in such a position?
I would not blame any part on the fishermen, because they most likely were unaware. Maybe some of them were aware of that ongoing problem. It has to come from the management of the fisheries at the time over the years and the directives. Now, if the chief fisheries officer at the time is seeing this and he's just kicking it down the bucket, it's going to happen. It's going to just get kicked down the bucket further and further. But the problem is there were no consequences attached to it. So you say, hey, Mr. Dowe, you need to change the laws. Next year come, you don't change the law. They remind you again, hey, Mr. Dowe, you need to change the laws. And we're not putting any punishment on you. We're not restricting you from doing anything. So there were no restrictions. There were no punishment attached to.
But isn't that negligence?
I would say so. Okay. Mr. Dowe, one of the things that we have to be blunt about, the Fisheries Division has been left to more or less dwindle. When we got into this position with managing the Fisheries Division, the Fisheries Division had 0 marine biologists working in it. Like no marine biologists, no data scientists, which is the fisheries. Managing fisheries requires science, data, and proper management, policy guidance. You had none of these existing in the last, before we got there into this position. We had none of that. So, in fact, a football coach was managing the Fisheries Division.
Let me ask this, because I'm a little bit puzzled. Something that you said 15 years after the ban, I mean, probably just like a crisis, we got the ban removed within 4 months. So why it took 15 years and a ban to do something within 4 months that ought to have been done years before?
Because, you see, the thing that the vision of the Prime Minister, Mr. Dowe, to create a Ministry of the Blue Economy is that the Prime Minister sees the importance of that sector of the economy.
That industry.
That industry. One of the things that when the new administration got into office, Mr. Dowe, I said to myself, and I said it to the Prime Minister, that we need a Blue Economy Secretariat. I told all the advisors, everybody, hey, we need a Blue Economy Secretariat. But the Prime Minister saw bigger than this. He saw a Ministry of the Blue Economy. So it is a priority. Within the last year, Mr. Gibbs, how many officers you would have had recruited?
6 biologists, well, included myself, and we just brought in some new data persons, and we have about 5 more persons scheduled, and about 6 more MP wardens. So we're looking at a ballpark figure of about 15, 20 persons interviewed, and I'm ready to go.
And that, Mr. Dowe, is important for us because, as I said, the managing of the fisheries and the coastal zone, it is something that is not done by guesswork. It is science that is needed to drive that. But back to the ban, Mr. Dowe. If we were not being punished for it, there's a high possibility that if the status quo remained the same and we didn't have people like Mr. Gibbs and all of the new recruits within the fisheries division, and we are not being punished, it would have been something that could possibly slip, because there was so much other pressing things for us to get done when we got in. It was very, very important that you cannot have a fisheries division, Mr. Dowe, run by a football coach. I have no explanation for it. A sector that is responsible for millions of dollars and thousands of jobs and auxiliary support, all the fish supply stores, the gear suppliers, the exporters, the fish cleaners, the vendors, all these people are connected to that. And you cannot be having it operated freely, willy-nilly.
Nigel, should we see this as an end issue or the beginning of a new compliance phase for fisheries?
Definitely the beginning of a new compliance phase. We are not out of the hot water yet, because once we met the requirements, what has to happen now is that we have to stay on track with all our compliance and all of the necessary monitoring that we have to do to
Who's responsible for compliance?
The state is responsible for compliance. So the Fisheries Division has to ensure that all the key stakeholders, including our fishermen, our exporters, follow the necessary regulations.
If you can, because what does compliance look like? So you're responsible to ensuring that there is compliance. And if we're to translate that, what does compliance look like on the ground?
Right. So compliance look on the ground first as critically, and Ambassador Eno alluded to it several times, the collection of data. It is critical because we're moving a resource from the marine space. And we trade in that resource. It's not just the artesian fisheries where somebody pull a fish out, they eat it, they feed their family. There is a commerce attached to that. Right. On a global scale, we are removing a shared resource. And so to ensure that the stock remains the maximum sustainable yield is always monitored, and that we can harvest from it sustainably, we have to ensure that every fish that we pull out of the water is recorded, and that report is submitted on a yearly basis or at periods during the year, because for different species there are different reporting periods. So the compliance has to do with collecting the data, submitting the data to NOAA, to ICAT, to FAO, to CRFM, which is our Caribbean fisheries mechanism and the governing agency for regional fisheries. Once we get to that phase, the next phase of compliance is ensuring that the protected species, including those that are not supposed to be taken within the closed season, and all of the IUCN and CITES protected species are adhered to. So they are not harvested, and if they are harvested, they must be declared, and then there is a protocol for not getting it into the trade stream, because the protected species should not be used for commerce. There is what we call in our reporting compliance mechanism. So the data sheet will show dead discard. So for example, we were flagged by ICAT last year for harvesting swordfish. Now Grenada had a quota for swordfish eons ago, but because of non-compliance, the quota was removed from us. We now have to reapply for a quota, just to harvest, commercial harvesting of swordfish. We did not do so, and our data which we submitted to ICAT was showing that we harvested and exported swordfish. So immediately a red flag went up. Well, I faced the music when I attended that meeting in Spain last year. Notwithstanding, these organizations are not there to pin you down and to bully you. They are there to help you build capacity and to get you back on track. Notwithstanding, there are penalties and conditions for breaking the law.
So we had fines to pay for this? Or
well, no fines to pay, but warnings that we need to get our house in order, and they would give you a period, and you have to keep reporting. So for the swordfish, if a fisherman now catches or hooks a swordfish, the first action would be to release it. How he releases it has to be recorded. So if it's a live release, he has to release it and say, if it was weak, if it was energetic, or if it was dead. He'll have to report it as dead discard. Now we had to implement logbooks, vessel monitoring logbooks, where the fishermen will go out and they will record the area they fish by the GPS location and the species they caught. And how
but which fisherman does this? I mean, really. How do we get us culturally?
Yes, exactly.
To do these things?
So it has the economic component of it, and the economic components would drive you to be compliant, because you don't want to be flagged again for something and you get banned.
But who do you? You is a fisherman or you is Grenada?
You is Grenada.
Right. But I'm the fisherman.
Right.
We tell me about logbook and mark down and release. So when I catch a fish already and I'll be battling with the fish for about 20 minutes.
Right. So
right? And then you tell me, what?
But you see, sometimes the compliance and the monitoring sometimes it could be a subset, a sample size of your fleet. Right, so because it's sometimes virtually impossible to monitor your entire fleet. Exactly. Now you're speaking about they out there, they don't have time. So for the bigger vessels, what is going to be coming for us is video monitoring.
Electric monitoring.
Electronic monitoring. It's already done in Barbados and the other islands. They are going to be eventually, so they are testing it out in Barbados now, where the larger trawlers, like what you see on the Carnage, they will be outfitted with cameras, AIS tracking, so we know exactly where they are fishing, how long they spend out at a particular location. But one of the reason for doing all of this is traceability is going to become a factor very soon. So the consumer in the US or the European Union would want to know where that tuna was caught. Was it caught sustainably? Was it harvested from a stock that is sustainable? So they want to know exactly where that tuna was caught. And we have to be in a position very soon to say this was caught 100 nautical miles south of Grenada, out of whatever stock. So we have the data now. So jumping the gun a bit, we got some funding. A grant was written up to IDB by myself last year. To get some funding from the Developmental Bank and the Complete Caribbean program. So we got $200,000 US to do a national ocean policy for Grenada. We had a draft ocean policy that was handed to us in 2019, but it was never finalized. So I wrote the grant and we got the funding. On top of that, I asked for some additional funding for additional $100,000 US, and we got that additional funding to do a pilot project on the fishing fleet, to put tracking devices on the fleet, on some of the vessels to see where they're fishing, how long they are out there, and collect some additional data from them. Now that is going to help with the compliance, because one of the things that NOAA said is compliance and monitoring. But we had to tell them we don't reach that far. We change the laws, we do the management plans, and we had to literally show them the grant letter from the bank saying the bank is paying for this. So we're going to have the vessel monitoring in short order. So actually, I think we have a meeting next week.
Yes, we have a mission
coming next week to launch the project, and we're going to work with the fishermen. The fishermen are by and large supportive of it because it is something to protect their livelihood.
Let me just ask this, because we battle, of course, to resume exportation to the US. But during the ban, there was lots of conversations about looking for new markets, diversifying markets. Yes. Where are we with that, one? Two, do we have sufficient fish to diversify the markets? And then three, are we going to be facing the same rules? Whether we're looking at the US, we're looking at Canada, you mentioned Europe, and hence we have to get our house in order no matter where we're looking to export the fish.
Yes. So just to go back a little before I answer those questions, what we also had to show in terms of compliance with the NOAA and the US ban is also a transition into technology that would protect marine mammals. So what we have is incidental and accidental catch. You're fishing for tuna, and the other pelagics where you may hook a dolphin.
Right.
Now, our consumers globally are getting so environmentally friendly that if some of the fish products, it may say tuna produced with minimal accidental catch or minimal interaction with marine mammals, with dolphins. Now, dolphins are a big thing for movies and for these marine
Nobody want to eat flipper.
Nobody want to eat flipper. So that is how the international consumer is looking, and that is why it is very important for us to ensure that we align ourselves with what the market demands are, so that the compliance will become easier for us. It will be an easier product to sell, because if they know that you are killing or destroying X amount of the marine mammals, the cetaceans, just a whole minute amount of tuna, then pressure will come from those markets. We're not eating these tuna because you're damaging the cetaceans to do so.
Okay.
Moving forward, your question was concerning the diversification and looking for markets.
Are we still there?
So the minister, I think Minister Lennox Andrews, Minister for Blue Economy, Marine Affairs, I think Economic Development, Agriculture, and the biggest portfolio in government ministries. Immediately we had some stakeholder engagement with, of course, our longliners and the general fishing stakeholders, looking at the possibility of getting out of that rut we were in with just the U.S. market. Now, the reason for that market being the single most targeted market is, one, because of its proximity to Grenada. All of the fish were exported via air freight. Grenada is renowned for having one of the best tuna quality, if not the best, on the planet, because of the time we take from harvesting to deliver into the market. The price in the U.S. is better than anywhere else on the globe for us. So all of the focus before was getting the tuna to the U.S. market. But what happens if the market denies your fish? You're left with the fish on your hand. So the minister definitely took the initiative to look at several markets, including Canada. We had discussion. In fact, there was a trade mission to Guyana, where we're now looking at an MOU. In fact, Guyana was looking, as of December last year, to start hauling minimal 70,000 pounds of tuna from Grenada on a bi-monthly basis. Frozen tuna, because now the tourism sector is growing, the oil industry, and because they mainly have aquatic freshwater fish, they're looking now to piggyback on our superior quality and the proximity of our market, as Guyana is looking to really increase trade among its CARICOM brethren, members. So we looked at market. The Chinese also reached out to us, and they were interested in getting fisheries products across to China. Of course, that is a distance market, and so the logistics of getting there, of course, we have to meet the food safety standard, which is something we have to also make mention about, because it is critical for us accessing certain markets across the globe. In fact, all markets. But
that really is the question, because if we were denied entry into the U.S. because we weren't practicing sustainable habits, would that be any different from Canada, European Union, etc.?
So the problem with the export issue with the U.S., it was not the sustainable practice of our fishing techniques and methods, and the way, not that our fishermen were using unsustainable methods. The problem was to do with something totally not in line with the fishing industry. It was marine mammals.
You know, I get that, but why that pressure imposed? Because was it just a loophole to get because of something else?
Well, that I guess for the foreign minister to talk about. But the other countries, none of them have the comparability findings. That only exists in the US. Grenada was traditionally used to export to the European market via Guadeloupe and Martinique. The fish that had been caught in Carriacou, the snappers and so on, these were all going to the European markets. Whether they're going to Martinique or to mainland France, they had to meet the EU standards.
Food safety standards.
And Grenada was one of the only countries that actually had that in the region. that accessibility to the EU market because of the quality of our fish markets, so they were maintained. For the EU and so on, the fish that we're exporting has to be the same quality as what we sell into our local consumers. Right. So if we want to export to any market, the EU market, we have standard HACCP standards that our fish market and the water that is being used to clean our fish, to clean the fish market, must be compliant with the EU standards. So hence, our fish market, you can go in our fish markets, very rare you get odor from our fish markets. They are relatively, you don't see flies, there are always ice over the fish, they're always covered. So the local person is helping protect our export market as well, because if the fisheries, the fish products that we are selling to our local consumers are not on the same standard as what we are selling to our international consumers, then we would not be in line for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And hence the investment in terms of the fish markets that we see around the island.
Yes.
And the investment mainly through the Japanese government, I believe, in terms of assisting with funding there. How compliant or cooperative have been our fisher folk with the new regulations, the new monitoring, the tracking, the documentations? How compliant have they been?
Well, our longliners have been incredibly compliant, and I think it's because they have recognized now that their very livelihood that they depend on has to follow certain requirements that would allow them to sustain their livelihoods. In fact, some of the fishermen, they say sometimes you can't group everybody in one basket. Some of the fishermen really had practices that would have suggest that even before we had to get to this stage of compliance, they had best practices that would protect the marine mammals as they do their tuna fishing. So, for example, there was a intervention some time ago where there was introduction of circle hooks into the fishing industry, the longline industry. Right. Now, the circle hook technology would allow you to catch a fish, but would not allow for that fish or a dolphin, if it is accidentally caught, to ingest that hook into its digestive tract or beyond the mouth area, where it would almost mean certain death. Even if you cut the line and release it, the damage would be so it can't feed and it dies. The intention of that technology is to catch a fish in the upper torso, the head torso, the mouth, so that if you have to do any release, it is much more easy for you to release that animal in a safe and a healthy condition. So these are some of the areas. They have complied with our logbooks, and we are in fact collecting the data. Okay. So I think the first time, and notwithstanding, the logbook that was developed was something that was developed by one of our biologists back in the era before he retired. Okay. So while we were scrambling and looking and trying to get things, one of the biologists, one of the new biologists who came in, was going through some documents and found a vessel logbook that was developed for the industry since 2015, 2016, but was left. And so nobody followed up on it after the gentleman, and it's one of the things we have to speak to about our succession planning, because that is one of the major issue we had regarding our fishery sector. People would have moved on, and there was no replacement of competent persons and persons who had the capacity to move to the next level. We are seeing incredible compliance, a real remarkable turnover from our fishing fleet.
Let me just also, sorry for interrupting here, because as we speak about the longliners, they were in the news for other reasons.
Yes.
So we saw them move from one area of the Carnage to the next area of the Carnage. Yes. I don't believe that is sustainable either.
No.
So speak to us, because it's just a shift. Speak to us about the sustainable housing of these boats.
So I will just make a short intervention, and I'll let Mr. Ambassador, comment on that, because we have something in the pipeline to solve that situation. So for years, the longline fishing fleet never really had a home, a docking area where they could dock the boat. There was a project probably about 15, 20 years ago where they had earmarked an area in the Port Louis Marina along the lagoon, the Kirani James Boulevard, just in front of the Hubbard's building, that Jerry's Auto Space, where they were proposing to put anchorage or mooring facility for the long lining fleet. Again, that is a project that just stayed, it was shelved, and in fact, in trying to look at other interventions moving forward, I found those documents because I'm relatively new to the fishery, so I'm going through the archives and seeing what has been done before what has been attempted. The area where the vessels are moored along the Carenage, or both along the Carenage, poses several, threats to pedestrians, and we had a unfortunate accident with a foreigner tripping and damaging herself. But more so, this safety for the marine traffic, for the cargo vessels that are coming in. And I really couldn't understand the uproar until a video was released some years ago where one of the cargo vessels was leaving the port. And as it put, the forward thrust, it pushed several of the vessels, the fishing vessels, crashed them into one another. And then I really understood, the danger and the dynamics of having these boats so close to our cargo port, and it really interfered with the safety and security of even the fishermen themselves. So I could have understand the plight of the Port Authority in trying to regularize that whole environment there and make sure that it is a safe one. But we have some initiatives that allow ambassadors.
So the first thing, the Carenage where the vessels are moored, or both, that's a port control area. That's a Port Authority has jurisdiction for the management of that area. But one of the things that led to the build-up of the long-lining fleet on the Carenage, for one, the majority of the guys are from Pitimatnik and outer communities and not necessarily St. George's, so they live on their vessels, right?
So isn't that in itself a problem?
We'll come to that. So one of the challenges, it is convenient for them, right? When they have to offload fish, the truck come right there. It is not the best situation for them. They to themselves know this is not the best place for them to call home. So when we got into office a couple of years ago, one of the things that the Prime Minister instructed me to work on was see how we can find an alternative harbor for them. And obviously infrastructure like this is millions of dollars. So we have had consultations with the fishing community. We had multiple consultations with them, with the longliners in particular, suggesting, hey, we need to find a new port for you guys. And not just an anchorage or just put in some moorings and have them anchored. It's to build an actual fishing port, because Grenada is one of the only OECS territories that has such a huge longlining industry. In fact, probably this is not existing in St. Vincent of the magnitude. It is not existing in St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Dominica. They don't have a longline industry. The fleet that we have in Grenada, the only places that have comparable or larger is Trinidad and Venezuela in the region. So we have it requires us to, 15 years ago, to see the trajectory of the fishing industry to know, hey, we need to invest in a port, because every year somebody's registering a larger and larger boat, and you need a place for them. Because if the industry is growing at that rate, you know to yourself, in 10 years' time, it would have even more, and we are driving blue economy, we are driving investment in the blue economy, we are asking private investors to come into the blue economy. Obviously, it's more trawlers. The more trawler you have, the more livelihoods you create. Now, what we are looking at is, we would have presented 3 options to the longliners. We looked at Grenville Harbour, retrofitting Grenville Harbour to see how we could create a port for them. We looked at Grand Mall as a possible site for a fishing port. Meet with the stakeholders, the community, the fuel companies and so on that is in that same vicinity. But it came back to St. George's. The Melville Street area is one of the areas were identified in a master plan that was developed about 10 or 15 years ago, a blue economy master plan, a Grenada blue economy master plan that looked at coastal development and so on. And one of the areas that were identified for the fishing port was just north of the current fish market. Okay. So the idea is to create a harbor there. So you do some backfilling and so on and engineering and have boats there to accommodate about 100 vessels. Because at any given time you can have 60 vessels on the carriage. Right. Because they sometimes they tie up in fives, and yeah, we see that. Yeah. Right? So it requires serious investments. We are in discussions with several other friendly governments to see how we can get funding to support the development of that. And we had some favorable response thus far. Over the Easter holiday, we had a delegation here from China looking at possible building the port in that area for us and look at the technical specification and our needs and so on. So that is one of the areas that we, but nothing is conform or finalized, but it's obviously something that requires a lot of time, a lot of investment.
So in the meantime, we'd have the 60 vessels on the carriage with each boat having 3-4 people living on them.
So one of the things the Prime Minister would have had consultations with the fishing, the longliners, the Ports Authority, the Coast Guard, and so on. And the area is managed by the Ports Authority, and they have to move. They have to move because of what the hazards they create and so on. And again, it can go back to a simple thing. The International Maritime Organization can say, hey, your harbor is not safe for ships to come in because there is vessels anchoring right next to it. What if you have an incident and the IMO says, hey, Grenada Port is unsafe, no ships beyond a certain size could enter St. George's Harbor? What's the implication of that? I'm just giving a scenario of how an international entity can apply pressure on us for something like that. So we have to look at these things, and not just as the need for the immediate person, but everybody that is involved and the country on a whole. Okay. So the Prime Minister gave his directive. He had the consultations with the longliners, the Ports Authority, aware of what they have to do. The areas, I said, it is outside of the fisheries of the Blue Economy Ministry's jurisdiction. Though the fishermen are our stakeholders, the Ports Authority manages the harbor. So,
yeah, and just to add, we identified what is really some low-hanging fruits on how to solve that situation temporarily until a facility is provided. So in discussion with the port master, we have identified some moorings. So the discussion we're having now is to relocate some of the boats to the Melville Street area. And if you look just outside the fish market, you will notice some of the cargo vessels that ply the Trinidad-Grenada route have been moved just outside of the fish market, and they're moored outside. So we are currently in discussion, which we have to follow up on with the Port Authority, Grenada Ports Authority. They are going to provide us, I think, with possibly about 30 to 40 moorings that we're going to deploy strategically, and we're looking at some areas tentatively now, Melville Street area being one of them, and possibly Grand Mall, where we could have, once the boats come and do their business of offloading and buying their supplies, and they need to both, maybe sometimes they spend a week, 2 weeks before they go back out. Then they can move to an area where it's safer for them to moor and just wait there until they return on their vessel, on their expedition, their fishing expedition. Okay. So those are some of the low-hanging fruits we're looking at in resolving the issue that's currently at hand.
Okay. Viewers and listeners, it's time for us to take our final break. So we'll take our break and we'll continue discussions when we return. And you certainly can call in to share your views.
Life doesn't stand still. It moves. It grows. It asks you to believe in what's next. Your first car. Owning your home. The business you build. The future you choose to invest in. life moves in steps. When you're ready to take the next one, we're here to help you move forward with banking solutions designed for life. From vehicle financing and mortgages to education savings, credit solutions, and support for your growing business. Republic Bank, ready for life, every step.
In our part of the world, we need to be prepared for natural disasters like storms and hurricanes, even outside of the season. I'm sure you'll agree that keeping our loved ones, homes, and businesses safe is important. So, I came up with a few quick tips to help you stay safe. First, make a family disaster plan and ensure that everyone in your household is familiar and comfortable with it. Remember to add batteries and flashlights to your emergency kit. Now, for electrical safety. Familiarize yourself with your electrical panel, as it may be necessary to switch off the power during a storm or flood. Make sure you install a transfer or isolation switch to prevent your generator feeding electricity to Grenlec's line. If trees are too close to power lines, call Grenlec at 237 for advice. By following these easy steps, you will be well on your way to being hurricane ready. Don't be caught off guard by natural disasters. Prepare now. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
In Grenada, sports aren't just a game, they're a way of life. They teach discipline, teamwork, and resilience. They inspire the next generation to push boundaries and chase excellence. That's why the Investment Migration Agency of Grenada is proud to support sports initiatives as part of our commitment to youth and national development. When we invest in sports programs, we invest in the future. We invest in the health and well-being of our youth, and we invest in broadening Grenada's reach, proudly connecting our athletes, our talent, and our nation to a global community. Together, we all go further. The Investment Migration Agency. Unlock the possibilities.
The Grenville Cooperative Credit Union introduces its new digital platform, managing your finances at any time from anywhere.
As a part-time student, balancing work and studies can be a real challenge. But with GCCU's digital app, these worries are no more. My parents can now remotely transfer funds to my account, and I can check my balance at any time, giving me the freedom to achieve my goals.
My days can be long and tedious. With this app, I can ensure my loan is paid on time, transfer funds to someone else's account, and check my balances. I don't have to rush to do business during my lunch hour or after work anymore.
With this app, I can request checks to pay my suppliers, letters for my business transactions. I don't have to leave my farm to go stand in line.
The Grenville Credit Union digital platform. It's convenient and secure banking right at your fingertips. Download the app today from the Play Store or App Store, or call 442-8602, 459-4325, or 416-8467 for further information.
Are you looking for a reliable, affordable, and customer-friendly pharmacy? Look no further than Hills and Valley Pharmacy, the nation's leading healthcare products and services provider. We are committed to serving you at convenient locations. Find an extensive and affordable selection of prescription and over-the-counter drugs and medical supplies at Church Street, Hillsborough, Carriacou, Jubilee Street, Grenville, St. Andrew, near the bus terminal, and Halifax and Grenville Street, St. George. Our committed team is always available to offer valuable assistance for managing your health and wellness. Discover the additional benefits of our wholesale distribution on Halifax Street and our Medcare Center on Grenville Street, where we provide in-house physiotherapy, massage therapy, doctor consultations, and eye care services. Our commitment is to satisfy all your healthcare needs, including competitive prices, loyalty rewards, and special discounts for seniors. Contact us at 435-6904 and WhatsApp 535-4734. Choose Hills and Valley Pharmacy. Remember, your health is our business.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. We're talking about the blue economy in Grenada. You certainly can weigh in 440-1252. That's the number. Feel free to call in. Jerry, why is regional cooperation important for fisheries management?
So, as I alluded to earlier, some of the stocks that we rely on traverse the entire Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. So regional cooperation is critically important for the management. Our laws should be harmonized. If we are managing lobster, spiny lobster that we have in Grenada here, these lobsters traverse that entire, our lobsters end up in St. Vincent, St. Lucia, they go all the way up. DNA tests prove that it's the same lobsters, the same cohort of lobster that are juvenile that come from Grenada, from the mangrove in Woburn, end up all the way in St. Vincent, right? So regional cooperation is important for management of these stocks because our fisheries law should be almost identical to St. Vincent fisheries law because St. Vincent can have a close season different from Grenada close season for the same lobster. Now, one of the other things that regional cooperation is needed for is for the science of it. Because studying seagrass in Grenada alone, isolated from what is being done in St. Vincent, it does not make any sense. Management of stressors, we're dealing with sargassum right now, right? Sargassum is not only coming in Grenada. A regional approach to sargassum management is what is needed, and that is what we are striving for through the OECS. I also serve as the advisor to the OECS Commission on Blue Economy and Oceans as well, so I advise the Director General of OECS on blue economy. And we are approaching sargassum management at a regional scale. For one, procurement. The nets that we intend to buy shortly to deploy in the key areas to prevent the sargassum from coming onto the coastline and being dumped on the coastline, rot, and affect health, affect economy, habitat destruction, and so on. We have to purchase the nets, and it's going to be a regional purchase because we're going to look at getting the same nets for St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Dominica, Antigua, and so on. Because the procurement, it would be cheaper than you buying. One thing we have to realize, Mr. Dowe, anything that is in the marine environment is very costly. The sargassum nets that we are looking at, the durable sargassum nets, these nets are 300 to 400 US per meter.
Okay. But let me ask this. Colloquialism, what's sargassum good for? I mean, there must have been someone else must have had a problem and had a resolution. The truth about sargassum, Mr. Dowe, sargassum has always been existing in a place called the Sargasso Sea, which is in the north central Atlantic Ocean, and it was trapped in that area by 4 currents that had the sargassum, the large mats of sargassum, in a perpetual circle in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And over time, pieces of sargassum would escape and you would see on your coast. I'm pretty sure as growing up in Grenada, you would see sargassum. But what has happened, the ocean currents has changed over time. The sea surface ocean currents have changed. The circulation patterns in the ocean has changed. More nutrients become available. So what you have now is a equatorial development of sargassum, and it is not in a circle. It follows the same path as hurricanes. So it goes from the east coast of Africa, and it comes across the Caribbean and ends up all the way from the Caribbean islands all the way to Central and South America, because it follows that pattern, the same route the hurricanes take, because it's the wind and the surface currents that move it along. So what happened, when that sargassum, the bits of sargassum escape from the Sargasso Sea, they end up in that nutrient-rich area. And obviously, they just grow because they have all the fertilizer, all the perfect conditions. So you have millions of tons of sargassum producing every year. And every year, the science and the data is saying it's going to get worse. So the challenge with sargassum being washing up on the beach is something new to almost everybody. When it started in 2011,
That's when we had the first major influx of sargassum in Grenada and the Eastern Caribbean, for a matter of fact. The problem is the quantity that was coming up on the show that is a problem. It's always been there. It's an ecosystem that provides the same tuna that we harvest. Part of its life cycle passes through the Sargasso Sea, where the juvenile tuna spends a part of their life. So it relies on that functioning ecosystem. Actually, there is the Sargasso Sea Commission, which oversees the protection and management of that area. But what we have here is the bleaching of the sargassum that is a problem. While it's out in the ocean, it creates habitat for a lot of juvenile fish as well. Fishermen, some of the islands go around the sargassum to fish because they know you have juvenile fish under the sargassum, and the bigger fish is coming to eat the juvenile. So you have that happening there. But the challenge comes when the sargassum washes up and it starts decaying. In fact, something that is overlooked by the sargassum and we don't hear it speak about is the gases that are being emitted from sargassum. Just a week ago, we were at the Ministers of Environment meeting in Dominica of the OECS, and a paper was presented and shared with us of a sickness called sargassum syndrome, which is causing inflammation in the communities that are in persons living in close proximity to sargassum. But the research and so on is still ongoing, but places like Martinique and Guadeloupe, they are French overseas territory, so they are more advanced because the availability of funds to do research and to do nets. When we went to Martinique last year and we were told they had sargassum nets in the water 6 and 7 years now.
Okay.
And we have not reached to that stage yet.
When do we anticipate having nets?
The procurement process, I say, for next sargassum season starting January, we would have nets in the water because the funding has been identified for Grenada for, and not through local funds, to donor agencies. We're going to be buying some sargassum nets. We have probably about $1 million EC dollars to spend on sargassum nets. And we spend a considerable amount of money on sargassum collection. You have staffing, you have groups that are managed by the Solid Waste Management Authority, who is doing an exceptional job in terms of coordinating and collecting and disposing of the sargassum that is beached on our East Coast.
Okay. Nigel, if you can just share with us a little bit, I'm just going to project because we're going to be out of time quickly, what the future of Grenada's fishery industry looks like in your eyes.
Well, the future will have to stem on our compliance, exploring our vast ocean space, looking to really conserve and sustainably harvest the species that we currently target, but looking for new opportunities to create and to explore the opportunities that new markets may provide for other fish species, and not just for fishing, but for research and innovation. Our Bentic provides several other resources that we can use, so possibly research into medicinal sponges and organisms that may provide certain medicinal properties that we could now look to add to the overall fishing experience, not in terms of catching a fish, but in terms of the resources that the ocean provides for us. But I can see now as low-hanging fruits going into value added. We have a lot of wastage, a lot of spoilage, and it speaks to our food security initiative and how we could ensure that if another pandemic, God forbid, comes our way, that we are able to sustain and keep our protein production.
We have a caller online, so let's just take this caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
The use of sargassum nets, I think it's a total waste of money. And the other thing is the Chinese building a port. I want to suggest that we put the port in Grenville, because that would bring employment into the north of the island. Everything now is to concentrate the St. George's area, and it's a kind of parasitic planning. So the rest of the island becomes kind of a ghost place. Grenville is now a ghost town. Grenville has the natural waters to have that fishing port.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller. Thank you very much for your contributions, caller. The first one is that the caller believes the nets might be a bad investment. And then secondly, just moving to the northern part and for rural economic development.
I would have to disagree with the caller on both issues. One, Sargassum nets are important for places like Marquis, Subies. These areas have never gotten any easement from Sargassum, and the Sargassum washes ashore. The nets are there to prevent the Sargassum from coming on shore. When the Sargassum gets on shore and it rots, I just identified that they're decomposing Sargassum on the shoreline, emits gases that are causing health problems, lung problems, sickness and illness, and so on. And that's just some of the studies. There's a lot more that we don't know that what the Sargassum is doing, that constant exposure to the hydrogen sulfide and other toxins that are emitted, and heavy metals. Sargassum has a lot of heavy metals built into them when they start decaying. So obviously we need to stop it from getting to the shore, because there are products that can be developed from Sargassum, and the products cannot be developed when the Sargassum gets to the shore and start rotting. It has to be collected when it's in its good, healthy stage, till out at sea, to be collected and processed. And that's the aim of the Sargassum Task Force, to look at the management and the valorization of Sargassum, to create added value from collecting the Sargassum, because there are numerous things that are developed from Sargassum thus far.
And then the other point was on the why St. George's again, when looking at the port.
So we had, as I said, we had three options, and we weighed in all of the options. For one, the harbor, it would have required a lot more work in terms of dredging and so on to bring that one up to where it wanted to be. And secondly, the sea conditions out there are always rough. It is always rough in the
Atlantic side.
In the Atlantic side of the island. So having a home port there, that's why you don't see boats tying up to the jetties in Grenville at any long duration, because maybe at the small jetties at the fish market, but to have a fleet anchored in there, you would have to build other breakwaters and even a lot more hard engineering. And so that was one of the criteria. The other areas, obviously the Grandma area, the fuel companies pointed out to us that eventually the tank farms are going to be expanded in the Grandma, because more vehicles are coming into Grenada, you need more fuel, so expansion, and they don't have an idea as to what exactly that expansion would be look like. So to go and put a hard structure like a port in that area would create some additional problems in the future. So you have to have a bit of foresight in that.
Okay. In terms of your sharing, if you can, and you can give your final comments in addition to this, what is the economic value you can place, let's say, on the blue economy? And just point our population, because if we're forward thinking, some of the jobs that exist now, some that will be emerging as a result of the development of the blue economy.
So first of all, we could put some direct values on some sectors of the blue economy. The fishing industry has over 3,000 fisher folks registered, and that's just the direct fishermen. Then you have all the support services, the fish market staff, the fish supply store, the ice makers.
We have another caller in line, so let's have that caller weigh in. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Good afternoon, host and panelists. Any connection between tourist ship discharges in the ocean and Sargassum? Is there an established scientific, correlation between these two situations?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So the Sargassum issue is one that is multifaceted. The science so far has said that is a multitude of things that are contributing to the Sargassum blooms in the Atlantic, in the mid-Atlantic. It's the enrichment from nutrients, the same what the college just identify, waste being discharged illegally in some cases, adding nutrients to the ocean, the warming of the ocean temperature, the change in the patterns of the ocean current. So deep down in the ocean, it's very nutrient rich. But now you have the circulation patterns changing, so that rich nutrient is coming up in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean where it don't traditionally come up, adding nutrients to the sargassum, because the sargassum is a plant basically, right? It requires sunlight and photosynthesis to exist, to grow. So yes, the caller is correct to say there is a correlation between pollution and nutrients enrichment. But as I said, the science so far is saying that sargassum issue is one that is multifaceted. There is not one thing we can say it's the root cause of it.
Okay. So dollars, we're talking 33 million.
We export, Mr. Gibbs, about what, 20, 25 million?
25, 30 million dollars.
That's just direct
annually,
export.
Direct export.
For fish.
Right.
But we are not talking about all the other auxiliary things that are associated with the fishing sector. Then you have dive tourism. You have the dive shops. We have about 6 or 7 dive shops on the island that take tourists to the sculpture park and to Grand Anse Reef System and so on and dive. A dive is 125 US.
Plus those dive shops in Carriacou.
You have dive shops in Carriacou. So that's an entire, there are persons that come to Grenada just to dive. So we have that as a sector. Then you have the yachting sector, right? The marinas, the repair shops. These are all things that are part of a blue economy sector that needs to know and speak to each other and have an overall developmental plan for the sector. As I said, it is not something, the blue economy is not something new that comes to take over and run the show. It's to collaborate and ensure that what we are doing, everybody knows what everybody else is doing within that space, so we can plan together. When the year ends, we plan, hey, Ports Authority is working on this. I collaborate with the Ports Authority on a number of things, the International Maritime Organization and so on. We collaborate with them on decarbonization of shipping.
We're in graduation season because we're in June, July.
Yes.
So the Form 5 graduate, the TAMCC graduate, the SGU graduate, what jobs are there? What are some of the emerging jobs as well? So
directly, Mr. Gibbs, I think every biologist that is in your fisheries now is a graduate of St. George's University.
St. George's University.
So there are direct jobs. And that's just the fisheries division. We are in the process of establishing our coastal zone management unit that would take care of the coastal zone management, the enforcement of the coastal zone management regulations and so on. These are positions that have to be filled by qualified persons. Then you have research scientists. You have even not persons graduating from SGU with degrees like that, but you have people that are going into coastal engineering. Then you have people that going into, you can look at fabrication of materials for welding on yachts and all these things. You have these jobs. A lot of the times when the yachts are here, it's foreigners that come to work on them because they don't have the necessary skill set to do. Have you heard of, there's probably 3 or 4 marine technicians in Grenada that does electrical work. And I'm pretty sure there's room for additional persons to go into those fields. Even boat building, maintenance of outboard engines and all these things, because a significant part of our fishing industry is the small date boats that goes out every day and come back in, and they require maintenance. You have people that are doing fiberglass
restoration work.
All these things are jobs that are not goes to the academic side, but they go to a place like NULO, they go to a place like the TVET programs that would look, and that's one of the things that the Prime Minister is big on, the technical skills development. Your path to success should not just be academic. There's a lot of other areas that you can become very successful. You have things like sail making. These are the people who own yachts, Mr. Dowe. Money is sometimes the least of their worries. So if you charge them to repair their sail, then oftentimes these jobs are high-paying jobs, and very few people into those fields.
What would we do to, one, showcase the jobs that are available as a ministry of the blue economy, and to ensure that Grenadians are trained to take those jobs? So
it has two parts to it, right? We have to train the current persons looking for jobs, right? Tell them that, hey, these are jobs that are there. But the more fundamental problem for the real transformation for Grenada as it relates to the blue economy has to start with the primary schools. And one of the things that we are working on, we are a bit behind on it, which is the Blue Schools Initiative. It's an initiative that the Minister James would have launched in the SIDSFO in 2025, I think, at a conference in Antigua, to have a Blue Schools Initiative. And it's something that I worked on to collaborate, to see how we can bring marine literacy into the school curriculum, not a subject called fishing or subject called marine science, but incorporating it into the SBA assignment, incorporate it into the social study, the integrated science. So I would have approached UNESCO, and they said they do have a Blue Schools program, but it was never shared with the islands. So now I wrote to them, we got funding to do an initial. We actually had a teacher from St. Rose Modern Secondary School in Guelph go to Colombia to learn the Blue Schools Initiative. So it's a training of trainers program. It is something that we have to get on board and have more dedicated person into that, because if we want to have that shift towards the blue economy, it requires the education at that level. Because growing up, until I became an adult, I knew there was something called a marine biologist. How much students know in primary school know about the blue economy and know about the marine space? There was one school, it's one of the private schools in Tempe. They invited me last year to come and speak to the class that goes into secondary school. And they had a blue economy t-shirt. They all dressed in blue economy, and they were excited to learn about the blue economy. So I had a lecture with them. So it's about educating that generation as to, because traditionally, what you would have happened is that persons that get into anything within the marine space, apart from, say, the guys in the Ports Authority who go study to be pilots and be port manager, Lazarus and Ian and these guys, they go education training and be in a formal sector. A lot of the other parts of the blue economy ended up as informal sector. So you go to secondary school, you don't like school, you drop out, you become a fisherman. And that by itself leads to additional problems, because there are fundamental things that you would have missed out from completing secondary school in terms of just general discipline and so on. So money management is an issue with fishermen throughout the entire world. It's the fishermen in Grenada, the government sometimes serve as their insurance policy. And it's not something unique to Grenada. It's throughout the entire world, fishermen operate the same way. All
right. Your last word, Chief Fisheries Officer Nigel Gibbs, and if you can tie in the importance of collaboration between the various sectors. So we're looking at Customs, Port Authority, yes, Coast Guard, Fisheries, definitely, as you give that final comment.
Interagency management. It is something, in fact, last year we spearheaded a workshop where we invited all of these key stakeholders, so Customs, Coast Guard, Immigration, Ministry of Health, the Bureau of Standards, the key stakeholders that normally would have either the competency to be the competent authority in some aspect of blue economy, so for example food safety, maritime transportation and regulation, the Port Authority, so that we would not be operating in silos. And of course to bring awareness to the public, the general public, as to the whole overarching responsibility for the blue economy drive. This is now not new, but an industry refocus on how we use our marine space to create livelihoods, generate revenue, and to educate our successive generations that are coming. In fact, last year into this year, we started on a series of public awareness campaigns, but targeting our schools, our academic institution. So TAMCC, I think the Grace Lutheran, there's another school, a private school in Montu, and we've already visited them, some of the biologists, just trying to educate our young upcoming students, the future fisheries officers, dive shop operator, whatever path they may choose. But there is a wide spectrum of livelihoods that can be harness or engage in under the blue economy. And so we now have to start setting the foundation to really have people not look at it as fishing, but as a blue alternative livelihood chain. So people who might have been previously on the pathway to medicine might find something. There is now deep sea mining that is coming up, something that would be critical to our industry in the future because of the unexplored resources on our sea floor. So these are high paying jobs. It offers a long and prosperous careers. And if we could have our younger citizens focus in on, home in on that, then we could see new trends developing for pathways for the employment and future building.
Okay. Mr. Nigel Gibbs, Chief Fisheries Officer, Ambassador Jerry Eno, Advisor on the Blue Economy and Marine Affairs. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much for sharing your expertise with us this evening. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, for spending a little bit over 90 minutes this evening with us. We certainly appreciate your engagement. And this is a topical issue, but something that is important as we look towards Grenada's future development. My name is Colin Dowe. I thank you again for being with us this evening, and I look forward to being with you in the next 6 days, 22.5 hours. Take good care of yourselves and each other. Godspeed.